who are participating today on a really important topic, something that I continue to hear about, and my office continues to hear about as we all grapple with the pandemic, but obviously our veterans in particular are having some significant and unique challenges. So I really am grateful to all of you for taking the time to be part of this roundtable this morning. I also just want to take the opportunity to say to each of you who has served, thank you for your service. And I know that even those who haven't themselves served on this call have family members who have. So I just want to thank you as well, because obviously when a person serves in the military and then reaches veteran status, it's a whole family affair. And the family supports them, worries about them, and lives with the real ramifications of service. And so I'm just really grateful to all of you for everything you've done for our country. Um, we know, as I mentioned, that our veterans are facing some particular challenges given the reality of the pandemic. That is not to say they weren't facing significant challenges before the pandemic hit. They were, but certainly everything from unemployment to isolation has really, I think, magnified the kinds of challenges veterans face. And I know that all of you have been working particularly either as a family member to learn more about what you can do, or as a private citizen, or running a business, or serving our government and serving veterans in your public service role yourself. I know you all have been focused on a lot of these challenges. I want to tell you for just a minute what I'm working on in Congress, and then I thought what we would do is open it up to the group and really drill down a little bit in some of the particular things you all are working on and observations you have about challenges veterans are facing and things that you need us to do at every level of government, but particularly for today's focus in Congress. I'm working on a number of bipartisan efforts to support veterans both through the pandemic and beyond. Last month, I introduced bipartisan legislation to strengthen the Solid Start program. Probably everybody on this call or in the roundtable knows the Solid Start program is something the VA is already doing. What this bill would do is enshrine it into law. What that does is says that in the first year of a veteran's transition into civilian life, there is multiple instances of outreach by the VA to let veterans know what resources are available to them. Because we know often we'll hear from veterans that they weren't quite sure what their options were. They weren't quite sure whether they qualified for different benefits. So the VA has started this program. We want to make sure that the VA never gives up on this program and put it into law. So that's one of the things we're doing. In addition, the Senate recently passed, and actually the president just signed, I think it was Thursday or Friday, the Commander John Scott Hannon Veterans Mental Health Care Improvement Act. That's legislation that I co-sponsored, which would expand veterans' access to mental health care. And I am very excited that the president signed that. I also recently co-sponsored bipartisan legislation to help address the high rate of unemployment among veterans as a result of the pandemic. This bill would help retrain veterans for in-demand jobs, as well as provide them with critical financial support, including tuition and housing stipends to assist in their education. Last thing I will just mention is our office is beginning to hear a lot from veterans who need their personnel records in order to qualify for benefits, but because of the impact of the pandemic on the National Personnel Record Center, they aren't able to get them. And while I appreciate that the NPRC has to keep its employees safe, this is highlighting two issues. One is they need to find a way to essentially triage the requests for records that veterans are making and make sure that they get the records to the veterans who are in the most dire straits first. But secondly, it points to the fact that they are highly dependent on a paper record system as opposed to a digital record system. And we absolutely have to invest in changing that because to have veterans contacting our office and saying, yeah, I know I qualify and I need the help, but I can't get the documents from the United States government that I served, fought for, and protected in a timely way is unacceptable. So I'll continue to work on that issue, among others. So that's a little bit of what I've been working on. Again, I am just so grateful to all of you for your efforts to support veterans. And I know you bring particular knowledge and skill and personal experience to this. So I thought what we could do, I'm going to start with Nancy Fowler, because one of the biggest changes for veterans during the pandemic has been how they access care through the VA. So Nancy, can you introduce yourself to the group? You may need no introduction to the people in the roundtable, but some of the members of the press might need to know a little bit more about what you do. And can you talk about how the VA made the shift to virtual care and what that now looks like for veterans? You need to get off mute.
Let's try that again. Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Monday. Thank you, Senator Hassan, for having me, and to all that are participating, and more importantly, to the veterans and their service to this great country. I've been in the VA over 6 years. I actually regret not making it a career choice 20 years ago, but by far it has been a passion for me. And I have a passion for marrying technology to healthcare. Which led me into telehealth and connected care. Telehealth has been around for many years in the VA, but obviously with the pandemic and the COVID environment we're in, it's become a limelight. And so what we've seen, and what's the most important modality that we're using right now, is VA Video Connect. VA Video Connect allows the veteran to meet their healthcare provider in a virtual medical room that is encrypted, and it makes sure that it's secure and private. It is very simple. A lot of veterans have used it and are pretty happy with it. What happens is that you'll talk to your healthcare provider, whether you're qualified to use this modality, and then they will send you a link instead of an actual a telephone appointment or face-to-face appointment. It makes the visits very convenient, especially for those in the rural communities that aren't able to access the care. What do you need on your end? All they need is either a smartphone, a tablet, a computer with a webcam, or a headset. And they just go about talking to their provider and seeing if they're qualified. And if you don't have the technology, we actually have the ability to get iPads out to veterans. They come with the internet built into it, and they are loaner devices, but it's a one click. So you would just click on a button on the iPad for those that are technically challenged, and you get into the virtual medical room and you have your visit.
I just did it. That's terrific. Are you hearing from any veterans who, even if they can get a loaner iPad, can't connect to the internet?
So these units do come with internet, and we do, prior to distributing them, we make sure that they're in a geographic area,
Right.
that they'll be successful with it. And we also, once we order them and they get it, we do a test call to make sure that they are connected prior to the visit. I haven't heard that there are people that have challenges once they get it. I think the biggest challenge is if people haven't used technology at all, just trying to navigate a device and where the buttons are and
Right.
what does it look like. So
yeah. No, for sure. But what I did hear you say is that there are certain geographic areas where this is not a possible solution because they don't have access. There isn't the broadband or cell infrastructure to allow access. And so,
yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Is phone access sometimes then audio? Sometimes something people can use, or what are people doing if they are in one of those geographic areas?
So the VA currently, we're seeing numbers of 55% of our veterans are actually having face-to-face visits, 25% are doing telephone, and about 20% are using VVC. And we've seen an upward slope in the use of VVC. It's been around for a while, and COVID-19 pushed us to a place where we started to use it, and we've seen such a great increase in the numbers.
And what are you hearing from people who do use it successfully? Do you think they'll stick with it after the pandemic?
For those that have used it, they can't get enough of it. They're asking if all of their providers can use it, and it is very simple. I do have to say that sometimes there are glitches. We work, not only do we at the VA, but also there's a national help desk that's available to help troubleshoot. And sometimes it's just a button, or they forgot to allow access to the camera. But once they've used it and they find how easy it is, it's amazing. We have veterans that are 90 years plus that are actually using VA Video Connect and are very happy with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And again, I think once people get used to the technology and have somebody help them, it really, when you think about the wear and tear and stress of getting up and out and to a medical appointment that may be an hour or two away, this is a really good option in some circumstances. So, well, that is nice to hear. Let's move on now to Eric and Dalton from VFR Healthcare. You all have a special mission to provide counseling services to veterans and first responders. So first of all, it's great to see you again, Eric. Can you talk about how VFR has adapted to provide services during the pandemic, and what VFR does a little bit more to all of the people participating today?
Absolutely. And Dalton, feel free to jump in as you'd like. So just to give a quick background, first of all, Senator, thank you so much for having me as part of this discussion. I'm a former naval officer, and I started this company with my best friend that I served with after I dealt with my own issues with trauma and PTS coming back and reintegrating back into society. So we provide mental health and substance use dual treatment to veterans, first responders, and their families. Teletherapy and telehealth has always been part of our long-term strategy, especially in rural areas. But of course, the pandemic has precipitated that quicker. So with that being said, we've had the ability to start doing outcomes on the veterans that we're seeing, outcome studies. And we're actually seeing that veterans are not only enjoying it, like Nancy said, they're actually coming to therapy more often, which is so important. Right. And I think it's important to mention that, with the suicide pandemic that we have, as well as the pandemic that we're dealing with COVID-19, it's a disease of isolation. Right. So as quickly as we can connect with folks, and the more we can connect, and if that has to be on teletherapy, it's working well on our end.
Okay. Dalton, anything to add there?
Yeah, absolutely. Senator, thank you so much for having us on. If I could echo everything Eric and Nancy said, I absolutely would, but it'd be silly to do that, right? I think the access to this tele-based medicine is an incredible benefit for veterans, as we can reach more people without them having to come all the way to where we are, particularly the older population that they're already at risk, and it's so much easier for them to get the help they need. And as we all know, veterans are a very difficult group to get into a therapy-based, mental health program because we're so stubborn. And every opportunity we give them to back out of that program is something that they might take. So when they have to drive 2 hours to get their care, they're gonna stop. But if it's one click away, it's a lot easier to keep them on track. So if there's anything that we could all benefit from, is expanding this service. We have our national partnership with the VA, and we'd love to see the ability for more community partnership in this telemedicine for veterans as well as active duty.
Senator, if I may, real quick, just add one thing to that. We are concerned with some of the more rural areas when it comes to broadband access. Right. And I think there are some innovative ideas that some states are taking in terms of using a VSO like a American Legion or VFW, and having a specific spot that can be a teletherapy. But I do see we are running into some of those problems in North Country with broadband access.
Yeah, no, that continues. One of the things the pandemic has really laid bare is the disparities in broadband access, not only in New Hampshire, but all across the country. And as you may know, the CARES Act had some resources for broadband, and I'm working with my colleague, Senator Grassley, to try to expand the timelines for completion that you can use the CARES money for. But it really speaks to the need for major investment in broadband infrastructure all across this country for the reasons you guys have just laid out, for the reasons of school children needing access right now to learning, but even before that, we knew there was a homework gap in New Hampshire and all across the country. And you can go down the line: remote learning, remote healthcare, remote business operations. We have to deal with that. Dalton, I want to go back to one thing you said, which was that veterans were stubborn. I also, what I sense from that really is something that I've talked about with some of the VSOs about, as we have seen this real epidemic of suicides, to use your term, Eric, among veterans. One of the things that some of the VSO members I've talked with have said to me is the culture of service. And I think it's also something I understand from first responders too, is that we're supposed to be the strong ones, and it's not clear whether it will be held against you professionally, and also just culturally if you are open about needing help. How do you guys address that? How do you help people through that?
Senator, thank you so much. That's an excellent question. And the big thing is, we are a culturally competent organization. Where we are veterans and first responders, or family members of veterans and first responders that have lived and grown up in this environment, and as such, we understand it. Right? There's
right.
One of the most difficult things for a veteran to do is to talk about the things that we've interacted with or seen or been impacted by. But when it's somebody has been there too, right? It opens everything up.
Yeah.
It feels a lot more like you're talking to a friend that you served with than really talking to a professional.
Yeah.
And keeping the integrity of that, right? The stigma is what we're fighting against, right?
Yeah.
That's a big piece of this. And that is a barrier to care that a lot of veterans and first responders put themselves into, where they're worried it's going to affect their job or their security clearance or one of those things. You have to make sure that integrity is there. And that's what we try to do.
Well, thank you. We may come back for more questions, but I want to move now to Leland Goldberg. And Leland, you started this program, VETRN. What motivated you to start it, and what issues do you see facing veteran small businesses during the pandemic? And thanks for being here again.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Senator. And I'm also thrilled that Dr. Osgood was able to join us, who was a graduate of our New Hampshire program. So I am a Vietnam veteran, having served in Vietnam during the Tet Offensive in 1968.
Thank you.
So I've had a pretty successful career since I came back. I was pretty lucky. And so about 6 years ago, I decided I wanted to give back. And I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Ray Milano at the Small Business Administration, who kind of set me on this road to put together a program to help train veteran small business owners. So I'm thrilled that we've completed 6 cohorts to date. We've graduated over 70 veteran small business owners. Eric, I look forward to having you in our next class. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about the program, Senator, so you can get a sense of it. So it's a 26-week executive MBA program, offered free of charge to veterans and family members, because family members are also important.
Yep.
And the program provides the veterans and the family members with the skills, resources, mentoring, peer-to-peer mentoring, which is an extremely important part of this program, necessary for them to grow their small businesses and provide them with the professional resources they will need to become successful. We also provide mentors for everybody who's accepted into the program, and access to our professional resources. VETRN is actually an acronym for the word Veteran Entrepreneurial Training and Resource Network. So, Senator, in March 2020, we completed our first program in New Hampshire at the corporate offices of Service Credit Union in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And so as a result of that, we were intending to do a second program in New Hampshire this year, but because of COVID-19, we couldn't do that. So I was able to convince the SBA. So the program is sponsored in part through grant funding from the SBA and the VA.
Yep.
And as a result of our inability to do an in-class program, I was able to convince the SBA to provide grant funding for us to do an online program. So we're now running an online program using Zoom. for all of the New England states, New York and New Jersey. And we're about 2/3 of the way through the program. We'll complete it in December of 2020. And the program is designed to build operational capacity. It includes ways to increase revenue, how to create sustainable jobs, includes topics such as business management, finance, cash flow, sales and marketing, access to capital, and government contracting. So we're really thrilled about the success of the program. Many accolades from our graduates today, and I'm sure Dr. Osgood will give you some of her thoughts. And anybody who's interested in learning more about the program can go onto our website, which is VETRN.org, where they can learn about the qualifications and apply to the program. I hope we have additional funding to do another online program starting in 2021.
Well, it's a great program, and I'm really grateful to you for starting it and for your commitment to it, and obviously for your commitment to your fellow veterans. And it's one of the things that I think it was last Congress, Senator Rubio and I have been working on, is trying to get the VA to start up within the VA a real focus on the transition from service to civilian life in terms of employment and business development, and not just see it as you're either on your own or you qualify for some sort of special program, but really help veterans transition into the business world in a way that makes sense for them. So your program is certainly a great example of how we can help do that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, let me turn it to Dr. Osgood, and it's good to see you, Dr. Osgood, again. I am very grateful for all of your leadership around entrepreneurship in New Hampshire. But in this particular conversation, you sought out this program as a family member of a veteran, and I'd love to hear about your experience and what you think its importance is.
Thank you, Senator Hassan, and thank you all who have served, and all of you here on this call and this panel who are also helping this issue. Yes, economic development and entrepreneurship have been something that my organization has been doing for 3 decades.
Yeah.
As a family member of a military veteran, my husband, my late husband, he died suddenly and unexpectedly, and that's how I met Lee. And so we worked together for 28 years in business in this business model. And he specifically focused on helping veterans in entrepreneurship, because that was a very specific interest, personal interest to him. So when he passed away suddenly and unexpectedly, I had to re-engineer the business.
Yeah.
So as you touched upon, Senator Hassan, we worked together in 2016 because our entrepreneurial development program helped all of the youth in Nigeria to take on entrepreneurship. Right. And this same program has been helping veterans across the country. But by taking Lee's program, as he touched upon, the reminder, even though I have an MBA and understood cash flow management and all of the aspects of it, the pieces that Lee Goldberg mentions in terms of the peer-to-peer and the mentoring, and that's what you touched upon, Eric, is the difference in your program. When you're helping veterans to connect in this way, that's touching upon that piece that's so important, where they have a sense of belonging, they have a sense of relating, that they don't feel as though it's a stigma because we're the ones who don't know what they're doing, that we can connect with each other. And so that important piece, I think, is one of the successful elements of the VETRN program. And why I took the class was to actually reorganize my company. And we moved from the Knowledge Institute to Osgood and Associates, where we focus specifically on this mental health piece, which was my PhD work, and then the science of entrepreneurship or workforce development. So really connecting those dots as the element does in the VETRN program. And now in my own work, it's become an incredible focus, because so many people, as you touched upon, Senator Hassan, are unemployed and underemployed. And I also serve as a mentor to them through a program in New Hampshire called Operation Sea Daddy. So I really love what everyone's touching upon here in terms of that people element, because that really is the essence of, once you connect with an individual at that level, then they can learn about and access the resources, and they want to, and they believe they can.
Yeah.
And that's such a key element. So I thank Lee and thank you all again for hosting this roundtable today.
Senator, if I could just add
Yeah.
to what Dr. Osgood said, I mean, and Eric Olnick also reiterated this, the aspects of this program that are so key and so important are the fact that we provide mentorship to everybody who attends the program from day one, professional mentors, whether it be industrial or financial or legal, whatever that might be, what their need is. The peer-to-peer mentoring, where we put together CEO groups, where the small business owners get together as peer-to-peer and understand and learn best practices from each other, is critical and very, very important. And also the fact that we provide them with the professional resources they need. I mean, I learned when I came out of the military, you lose that family when you come out of the military.
Yeah.
And it's so important to provide them with the resources so they know they're not alone. There are people there who can help them. So we provide pro bono services to the extent that we can. We provide guest experts who are professionals in their fields. And so a combination of all those resources is really what makes this program unique.
Well, thank you. And thank you both for speaking so completely about it, because I think one of the things we're also seeing, you know, we have veterans with their experience and their skills, but also some traumas and some transition issues who are an enormous resource. We have an economy that is driven right now by technological change, among other things. We're making sure that people can keep learning and keep maximizing their talents is going to be more and more important for us as we move into the next stage of our economy and as we recover from this pandemic. And I think a lot about, you know, when I think about kind of what makes us American and what the American promise is, it's always about our capacity to bring out the best in each other. And that's really what you all are talking about, is how to help people understand what their strengths are, be confident in them, be confident in their capacity to learn and change. And that really is, you know, when you talk about successful entrepreneurship, that is often what's really at the root of it. So I'm really excited by all the work you're doing and can't wait to see more and more of the results. Let's turn to Amy Cook for a minute, because we've been talking a lot about the virtual space and how programs have been adapted during the pandemic. So Amy, I want to bring you in to talk a bit about the importance of people staying connected during the pandemic, and what kind of programs are available to veterans, both online and offline, in their New Hampshire communities.
Senator Hassan, thank you for having me. And listening to everybody talk, I'm probably going to wrap it up perfectly because I want to talk about in-person recreation and then a little bit about employment.
Yeah.
So it's going to wrap up perfectly. I co-chair the Suicide Prevention Council Military and Veterans Committee. And one of our focuses in terms of suicide prevention has very much been social connection. So when the COVID-19 started and we all went home to work and we all went home from school, it became a big focus. Our meetings turned into virtual meetings, but we talked a lot about what that was going to mean in the future. So even a year from now, we thought that people were still going to be recovering from all the isolating that they were doing. So one of our member organizations actually is Northeast Passage at a UNH. And our committee has been working to put together a veteran wellness series, specifically in the Lakes region, but they recently got some funding from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and some of the CARES Act dollars that Swim with a Mission was given out. So they partnered with ClearPath New England. I know that they're doing some groups with VFR. And also up at Boulder Point and Plymouth. So they still have a whole schedule of things happening this fall that people can sign up for. So it's still, they were doing some virtual stuff, but they recognized very quickly that in-person events and that peer-to-peer connection was still super important. So pre-registrations required just because they are limiting the number of people, but they have cycling, archery, wood carving, hiking, all sorts of different stuff. So we're excited about that, especially in the Lakes region, because that was a region we felt was a little bit lacking in those kind of opportunities. They also have some funding to use through December for one-on-one recreation therapy with veterans as well. So if somebody's interested in that, it's paid for through the funding, which is good. And then another thing I wanted to bring people's attention to is the veteran centers at colleges and universities. So again, a lot of stuff is virtual, but they are really making an effort to still keep those veteran centers open so that people can drop in, connect with peers, connect with other people at the university, get their needs met in an in-person way as much as possible. I was excited to hear people talking a lot about family members. The New Hampshire military leadership team, we're going to be focusing on family initiatives in the coming year. And a lot of that family initiative focus is going to be social connections. So spouses, family members, they tend to need those peer connections as well. And they're often forgot about in terms of veterans issues. But as you had mentioned in the beginning, the family serves as well. So it's definitely times of transition also affect the family. And then the last thing I just wanted to share that we're super excited about, this past summer, the Department of Military Affairs and Veteran Services and New Hampshire Employment Security, we launched New Hampshire's first veteran-friendly business recognition program. And so we had an application period over the summer. It just closed on September 30th, and we are super excited that we're going to be recognizing 18 businesses across New Hampshire on December 9th. And the application itself, it was designed specifically to act as a roadmap for employers. So a roadmap built on levels of how they could better serve veteran employees, veteran customers, veteran patients, and veterans in any way possible, and even the veteran community, like impact the larger veteran community. And we saw it working right away. So even before the application period closed, I had several human resources people call me and say, you know, we saw this on this other level. How do you do that? Can you connect us with another business that does that so we can learn about it? And the reason I bring this up, the employment piece, is that social connections for anybody, not just veterans, but for anybody, social connections often happen at work. Yeah. You know, in employment as adults, you know, I often think, you know, if I moved somewhere new as an adult, where would I meet people? You meet people at work.
Right.
And so part of that rubric that we designed in the application was opportunities for social connection at work. So connections, you know, do employers build programs that can help in a mentorship capacity, help people with their career, help people meet other people, and have that social connection. It was really important. So there's lots of opportunities to do that in a work environment. And we're going to be working with those 18 businesses in the coming year, kind of our inaugural year, to build on that program and hopefully roll it out for more people throughout the year, throughout the coming years.
That's terrific. You know, I think back to the concept that we all started supporting way back when I was in the state Senate and then as governor, and you have been developing it further and further, which is this notion that we're Fort New Hampshire. We are here for our veterans. We don't have an active duty base, so we've got to figure out how, without the base structure, to make sure that people know where the supports are, know that they've got other veterans and other veterans' families there, and community members and employers who want to be there for veterans. But to your point, figuring out how to do that is something that we all have to develop more and more competencies in. You know, I will also say for those on the call who haven't checked in to visit Northeast Passage, and right now, obviously during the pandemic, you'd need to do it with appropriate social distancing. I had the opportunity, probably about 6 weeks ago now, to go kayaking with a group with Northeast Passage on the Lamprey River. And it was really fun. And one of the things that the veterans really told me was this was a really important way for them to make a connection, to get themselves out of the house. There were people who had a variety of physical challenges who were participating. And of course, that's what Northeast Passage is so particularly skilled at, is adapting equipment and experiences outside for people of any kind of physical or mental ability. And it was one of the nicest. I think I was supposed to do it for an hour, and I think I made Justin stretch it to like 2, because it was really fun. And we were having good conversations across the water, you know, a kayak distance away. But it's a really important and really model program. I mean, a lot of organizations around the rest of the country look to Northeast Passage for the example of how to do this. Anybody in the roundtable have questions for each other or additional comments you want to make?
This is Dr. Osgood. I just want to really commend, and you know, I've been doing this, as I said, for about 3 decades, but commend everyone here for really respecting and taking so much into account and acting upon the mental health side of this, the neuroscience, the physiology behind it, the individuality, and really making this a community and not just a scientific program that says, oh, you need a job, let's get a resume.
Right.
No, this is very impressive. So I'm really pleased to be invited, and thank you all for what you're doing.
Thank you. That's, you know, I am reminded, my dad was a World War II veteran and was in the Battle of the Bulge, and always downplayed it because he was a company clerk. So he wasn't as frequently on the front lines as others. And it wasn't until the very end of his life he would really talk about his experience in any kind of detail, you know. And then as he talked about it, I realized he had seen more combat and more trauma than he had let on for all those years, right? And it's just, you know, and I think the other thing was he always felt he came home. So what did he have to complain about, right? So again, it's instructive. And you think about how well supported veterans were generally in World War II compared to some of our other wars, like Vietnam. It really strikes me. So anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on something Amy said real quick about the recreational therapy.
Yeah.
We partner with ClearPath and Northeast Passage. We work really hard to partner in the community, and recreational therapy is such a huge approach, a different approach for these veterans and first responders, because it's non-traditional, and that's kind of what veterans and first responders need. So the more opportunity for community partnerships in this, between the VA and all the organizations in the state and nationally, the more we can do together, we're going to benefit veterans a lot more.
Senator Hassan, the other thing I'd like to say is, as we graduate more veterans, and as I said, we've got about 75 now. What I say to them is, look, now that you've graduated from our program and you're becoming successful, it's important for you to give back.
Right.
And we see that now. We see them not only being successful in their own right, but giving back to other veteran small business owners. So the peer-to-peer mentoring and the giving back by veterans to other veterans is also very powerful.
I would think so. And I would think it would be powerful not only for developing yet another competency when you coach somebody else, but also I would expect it boosts self-confidence and a sense of self-worth too. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Right.
But that's really important to keep focused on. You're going to be building more and more competency within the state.
Right.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything else they want to add or questions? Or
just wanted to add one last thing, and not to get negative, but I think the effects of this virus and the pandemic, we're going to have a mental health, what I would call tsunami, that's going to come, and just to be aware of that, and to try to adjust fire to it, I think is going to be very important, both at the state and the federal level.
Right. I expect that to be the case, and I think it's a really important flag. It's certainly what I'm hearing from veterans who are leaders in our VSOs. They are really concerned. They are hearing more stories of people who are really struggling with their mental health, and they're very worried about access to care, even when somebody does ask for help. And obviously, even before the pandemic, we had a mental health workforce shortage, and you know, and that runs the gamut. I mean, from specialists who can help people with substance use disorder to other kind of behavioral health conditions. But we really are going to need, I think, to invest in behavioral health workforce overall in a massive way. And I'm hopeful, the good news is there tends to be bipartisan recognition of this. And I think we just all, that one of the hardest things I think is for people to tell their stories. One of the reasons we made some progress on substance use disorder, not enough, we still have work to do, is that people began speaking about their experiences and speaking about the fact that they had this disorder. And the stigma has begun to recede. Again, it is still something we have to address. But as more and more people from all walks of life said, this has happened to me, and this is how I'm dealing with it, it makes it easier for other people to ask for help. I'm hopeful that as we encourage veterans to come forward and acknowledge that that service involves trauma, transition it can feel uncertain, to put it mildly, and that it is typical and normal to struggle with this. And I think if we can get that word out there, especially from veterans, we have the opportunity to help a lot more people.
If I can just add one more thing to that, and we've all been talking about it, Eric, you're hitting the nail on the head. And vocation, when it comes to vocation, that's where a lot of us get our self-worth.
Right.
And so, yes, while we are going to see a tsunami of mental health issues, the more the programs that we're all talking about here can reach these veterans in a way where they can somehow find value, whether it's through traditional employment, self-employment, a combination of both, or even volunteer activities, depending on the stage and phase of their life. It's that piece that really validates who they are, takes them out of the trauma, and then transitions them into a new part of their life where they can see they have value and worth, and it's validated by the community. So that's an exciting piece here, not to lose sight of, as we do face what I think is going to be a surgence of this.
Yeah.
So if I could just add to that, Dr. Deborah, as COVID-19 is showing us all too clearly, as jobs become more difficult, as companies are not hiring back the number of people that they had pre-COVID, entrepreneurship and the alternative of setting up your own business becomes an option that more and more veterans are going to be looking at. And so I think it becomes even more important for us to make available to them the kind of resources that we're talking about here.
Absolutely. And Nancy, I know that the VA has been focused on behavioral health and mental health care for veterans. Certainly, connected care is a big piece of that. Anything you'd like to add in terms of what the VA is trying to do to prepare for what is likely to be an increase in need for behavioral health?
So actually, thank you for that. And I just wanted to talk about the recreation therapy as well. We've seen an insurgence of virtual recreation. We're seeing veterans just wanting to be connected and joining in these group dynamics. But what's nice about virtual care and using telehealth is we actually now have hubs that are built. We have one in Connecticut that can actually help increase capacity throughout the VAs in the VISN. So we have specialists throughout the country that actually can visit with veterans here in New England and in New Hampshire with specialty behavioral health backgrounds, which we didn't have before. So we're seeing this huge expansion, and it's really exciting what's available and what's out there. And again, I would like to echo that the veterans are, what I'm hearing also from mental health providers now, with the VVC and in the comfort of their home or wherever a veteran would like to be, they actually embrace using that modality to seek behavioral health care. So they're starting to see more people engaged in it, which is exciting as well.
Very exciting and very necessary, I think, for all the reasons we're seeing. The other thing that I think sometimes gets lost in these discussions is just as veterans are on the forefront of service and protecting the country, when the VA and other veteran service organizations and people who want to support veterans come together and do this kind of groundbreaking work to help veterans, it obviously has a ripple effect as we develop expertise for the civilian population too. That's certainly been true for veterans healthcare. There are, battlefield techniques, frankly, that have made their way to civilian care. As I think about this conversation about the importance of mental health care for veterans, I think, when you think about the other populations who are going to need additional supports and care after the pandemic or through the pandemic and thereafter, including children, I think there are going to be models of how we pull people together to build the competencies we need to build and build the workforce we need to build. That we'll be looking at veterans and veterans organizations as wonderful models there. And I expect that some of the veterans we all know will be on the forefront of trying to help our kids too. Because the other thing that has always struck me is most veterans I know never really stop serving. They just find different ways to do it because it's so much part of their spirit. So before we open it up for questions from any of the members of the press who are on the call, anything else any of you want to add?
Senator, you actually you brought up one really good point that I want to plug before we go. The civilian population and the treatment options that we provide veterans organizations, where that really meets right now is the National Guard.
Yeah.
There so many of them are deployed to help with this global pandemic. And a recent report showed the National Guard has the highest suicide rate amongst branches. And access to the same care that our veterans are receiving would make a huge impact in reducing that number to bring it below average.
And thank you for mentioning that. I believe the New Hampshire National Guard is the best National Guard in the country. I have had the privilege of seeing it up front and close, and the privilege of serving as their governor. And they are remarkable citizen soldiers. They're top notch, but to your point, they don't always have the same benefits and the same access to care that other members of the military family do. So we need to continue to work on that. And it's something we've been trying to find some creative ways to do because service is service. And we got to stay focused on that.
And I think one of the most creative ways we could do that together is telehealth.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And now,
Senator,
Erin, go ahead.
This is Nancy. Just a few other points.
Yeah.
In the world of connected care and the virtual modalities, we have the My Healthy Vet application, which allows the conversation to happen through secure messaging between your provider and your healthcare professional as well. You have access to your records through that modality, ordering medications, but we also have a number of mobile apps. We have a PTSD app and some other applications that veterans can use that will adjunct what they're using for behavioral health. And I think it's an opportunity that has gone probably unnoticed. And so I would like to encourage veterans to look at those and to explore those.
That's terrific. Thank you so much for mentioning those. Now I saw Erin appear, which usually means that we're running low on time.
It does mean that. And I did just want to open it up in case we had any questions from the reporters on the call. You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask if you've got one. We can give it a...
Hi, this is Paul Hayes with the Caledonian Record. I'm not really sure what my question is, but one issue, COVID has brought a lot of things into sort of the light, whether it be broadband access or frontline workers, income inequality, whatever. With military service, and maybe particularly up north with people who've served in the Guard, has it sort of made clear, where military veterans, where Guardsmen, what sort of place they occupy in the economy in terms of what they do for jobs and how they've been affected specifically by COVID and the way it affected the workplaces and the economy? I know it's sort of a broad question, but.
Go ahead, Amy.
I can't answer specifically to what fields might have been impacted. The only thing that pops into my mind to add to that question or thought is I do know that because so many guardsmen were activated during COVID, that we at the Department of Military Affairs have had conversations about how right now, a lot of those guard families are doing really well because that kept them employed. So a lot of them were in positions or working in fields that they very well might have been laid off during COVID, but because they were activated, they kept working. So they kept having a paycheck. And we haven't had a whole lot of needs in terms of, we often have people call and ask us, what do guardsmen need? What do the guard families need? We want to help. And right now, the guards families don't seem to have a whole lot of need, but we've been keeping in mind that once they all start to return to their civilian jobs that may not be there anymore, right. We just keep in mind that we think there's more to come. There's another shoe to drop, that we need to keep an eye out and make sure that we can help them return to jobs, and that they have what they need as they're coming off of active duty and returning to jobs. So it doesn't speak towards either the sectors they were taken out of, or impacting which career fields, but there were quite, as you know, many of them who were employed during this time, and they may not be going back to a job that's still available. So it's just something that we're keeping an eye on as the next few months proceed. So that kind of answers your question, but probably not really.
Well, and I'd add, Paul, that we have needed to at times push the administration to recognize the function that the guardsmen and women are performing during the pandemic, and make sure that their duty was recognized as federal duty that comes with certain supports and benefits. And so that's something that we keep an eye on to keep pushing the administration about. The other thing, the most recent data I have in terms of background on veterans unemployment is that overall, the veteran unemployment rate across the country in 2019 was 3.1%. And in 2020, it is now 6.4%. So we have definitely seen an increase overall in unemployment nationwide. How that compares to overall changes with other groups, is something we can try to get you as well. But that's just a little bit of a reference point.
If I can add to this as well, it really speaks to, and what you were saying, Amy, is entrepreneurship and the veteran program. And Lee, you touched upon it earlier. I mean, the data, not just for veterans, but it suggests that half of the jobs that we all understand are going away. Yeah. And there was already data, depending on how you count a self-employed individual, suggesting that 50% of Americans are self-employed, either part-time or full-time. And this was before the pandemic. So entrepreneurship, Paul, is going to be just a key element in helping individuals to get over a lot of the myths, believing that I can't be an entrepreneur. I don't know how to do that. It's high risk. It's long hours, all of that stuff. We help to work against. And in fact, the program that Senator Hassan, we worked with you, that was adopted by Nigeria, that's also been adopted by vocational rehabilitation. They have a high degree of individuals with mental health already. PTSD, traumatic brain injury even, all of these factors, and they have an 85% success rate, helping these individuals to earn income on their own through self-employment. So this is the way, and the Department of Labor saw this, the turn of the century, that the primary employer this century will be self. And so programs that are starting to help people understand how they can create their own job is key.
Can I just add to that as well? So in response to COVID-19, the SBA asked us, and we have now added to our program. We now have a program entitled How to Manage Through a Financial Crisis that we teach as part of our program. And I think that's going to be more and more important as we face the issues relating to COVID-19.
We got one other question in the chat box from Andrew at Manchester Inklink, who asked, how would you describe the general state of veterans overall in New Hampshire at this time?
Amy, do you want to take a first shot at that, and then maybe we'll go to Eric and
Yeah. I think it overall, so talking very big generalities, veterans do very well in New Hampshire. We're a small state, but small and mighty. We have about 102,000-ish veterans. The majority are over the age of 65. So we're certainly seeing older veterans pass away more quickly than we're making veterans. So that number is going down every year. Usually, so now this is pre-COVID, the veteran unemployment rate is usually pretty low compared to other people, which is a good thing. So we're hoping to get it back to that after COVID. We can look in the rearview mirror someday. So in general, they do fairly well. Statistics I've seen just for New Hampshire show them on average making more for a family income than non-veterans. Even the homeless population is for veterans is less than the civilian homeless population. So in general, they're doing well. But I think that speaks a lot to the programs and the services that we have in New Hampshire to keep that going. And, and be able, I think that we're in a position, I'm confident that we're in a position in New Hampshire where even now facing COVID, I see all of us and all these organizations, state departments, like we're all sort of coming together to get ready for that tsunami, because we don't want it to get to a point where it's not as good as it used to be. Yeah.
And Senator, just to piggyback on that, I think veterans, we do well under crisis and under stress, right? So I'm not worried about now. What I'm worried about is once things start calming down, right? And it goes back to what Lee and Deborah were saying about having purpose, right? I think a lot of vets, once they lose that purpose, that's when they run into trouble, right? And I think the state of the veterans right now in the state of New Hampshire, I think they're handling it well. They're taking care of their families. They're handling the crisis well. It's once things calm down that we're really concerned.
Yeah. I think that's well said, and I think that's true. We're going to see it for frontline workers too, and there are plenty of veterans who are frontline workers, including the Guard right now, in particular. But people will keep active and keep doing what they need to do to help other people. And then when the adrenaline settles and, and the collective country's adrenaline settles, then how do we go forward? So, look, I can't tell you how grateful I am to all of you. One last chance for any last comment, something we didn't cover, something that people want to say, but then we should probably close this out.
Just one quick thing, Senator.
Yeah.
I'd love to take a quick group shot.
Oh, sure.
So I'm going to close my video, and if everyone can do, the way we take photos in this COVID world. Perfect. So I'll hand it back over to you, Senator.
Okay. Any last comment, question, anything we didn't cover?
Thank you again.
Look, thank you all very much. Again, thank you for your service. Amy, one thing we didn't talk about, I understand you have a family member who served in the Boxer Rebellion, if I'm right.
Yes.
Which is pretty cool. And I've now instructed my staff to go back and read about the Boxer Rebellion because
he was awarded the Medal of Honor for 4 days of action in June of 1900 in the Boxer Rebellion. And then he was in World War I, was on the USS President Lincoln when it sank. He survived that as well. My grandfather was a Pearl Harbor survivor. So we were always told, you had mentioned this earlier, Senator Hassan, we were always told by both my great-grandfather and my grandfather that we were the lucky ones.
Yeah. So
the lucky ones have a responsibility to serve for the rest of your life.
Yep. Well, that is beautifully said, and I think sums up the approach that I see in New Hampshire veterans and veterans across the country each and every day. So thank you, Amy, for everything you do for them, and Nancy as well, Eric and Dalton, thank you. And Lee and Eric and Dalton, thank you for your service. To everybody here, thank you for serving veterans. And Deborah, thank you as well. I know your late husband was a veteran too. And again, this is a family affair. We're going to keep working through the pandemic, and we're going to get through the pandemic, and then we're going to be confronted with the task of really how to build back more inclusively and better. And I look forward to working on that with all of you, in particular, to support our veterans in these efforts and to support our veterans because they're going to lead us as we go through this time. So thanks
Thank you,
again.
Senator.
Take care and
Thank
be
you.
safe, everybody.
Thank you very
You
much.
too.